Okay, Baruch haba, everyone. Here we are again. We are in the fourth parsha of our triennial cycle, the ancient triennial cycle. So glad you all are here with me. Hope you can hear me okay. Today's Torah portion is called sefer toledot. This is quite literally the book of registrations, right? Or the book of the genealogies, or the book of births, or the genealogical line, or the record of the genealogical line. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, Modeim anachnu lefanecha, ki anachnu yodeim et shimcha. We're so grateful that we know your name. Ken yichatzon ki hayom hazeh אנחנו יכולים ללמוד טוב בעיניך, בעיני אלוהים וגם בעיני אדם. תשלח נא עלינו את רוח קודשך, אדוני. ואנו רוצים לראות את פניך. Please send your Holy Spirit. Please, Father, we want to see your face. May you touch everyone. Tigamna et kol et koli. Everyone who's hearing my voice, ki lo rak ani, that's not just me, but kol hakahal asher lilimod, that's the whole congregation that teaches, that we might study together from you, Abba, as our source. The kol hadavrim ha'eli, anachnu nevarekach, b'shem Yeshua HaMashiach. All these things we give you praise. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay, so please sound off. If you hear me okay, just type something. Okay, I see the amen. That shows you heard. Great, Baruch Hashem. The reading for today was quite short in our triennial cycle. It was Genesis chapter 5. Oh, verse 1 through 6, verse 8. Okay. And the Haftarah is Isaiah chapter 29, verse 18 through 21, it seemed to me. Seemed it was about like that. All right. Let's get into it. In case you never did your screenshot, there's a screenshot of the next few months worth of parshiot. Or you can just ask me for it. I've transcribed this for the next few months. Word document. Here is the Masorah. I'd like to show you guys this. This is from, again, the Westminster Leningrad Codex. This is where today's Torah portion starts. So here is the end of last week's. And then here's where our Torah portion starts. And you can see the comments in the columns, right, in between each column. And then on the top we have comments, and on the bottom we have comments. This is part of the Masorah, the biblical tradition. When we go a bit closer, you can start to see, if you look closely, Ze sefer toledot Adam, Bayom bara Elohim Adam, dmut Elohim asa oto, zachar unekeva baram. Okay, let's look closer. So here we are. So here is our marker. That's where we can see where the triennial parsha is marked. You have this giant samach-looking thing, and on top of it, it has like a sideways-looking comets, and it's showing us that this is where our Torah portion starts. Okay. So what you're looking at, this is the complete Tanakh, fully annotated, the Westminster Leningrad Codex. It's in St. Petersburg, Russia, and well, this is it. This is the go-to for the oldest complete neatly pointed document that we have. That means with these little dots underneath, right? And the cantillation marks, the singing signs, these grammatical markers. This is the oldest one, the oldest complete Masorah. That's why we call it the Masoretic text, right? From the word Masorah, our inherited tradition. Okay, great. A few more rolled in. That's great. All right, and I want to show you this interesting picture here. So this is called the Bologna Torah scroll in España, in Spain. It's also known as the University of Bologna Torah scroll. And this is the world's oldest complete extant Torah scroll. The other thing I showed you was called a codex. It's kind of like a book. Like people learned how to do book type formats, and that was a great way to preserve the Tanakh, the Hebrew Tanakh, right? The quote unquote Old Testament. But as far as scrolls go, where they're wrapped up like this is the oldest one that's complete. There's no damage, no letters have rubbed away, etc. And it's from 1155 to 1225 in the Common Era, right? So that's about 800 years old plus. That's pretty impressive. So here we are at the beginning of our parasha. This is Genesis chapter 5, verse 1. Now, interestingly enough, next week we will be on Torah portion Noach, right? But it won't be the full Torah portion. It will be the triennial version of that Torah portion. But it starts there. So you might have noticed by now that the annual parshiot, the annual Torah portions, where each of them begins, those are also parshiot, Torah portions in the triennial cycle, just a shorter bit, right? So of course they were important enough to be in the ancient cycle. Remember, the ancient cycle is older than what is done around the world today, than the annual cycle. Okay, so let's look at this. Chapter 5, verse 1 of Genesis. Ze sefer toledot Adam. Okay, and we'll stop there. This is the sefer. So what is the Hebrew word sefer? Sefer comes from the verb siper, to relate, to tell, to give an account. So this is a noun that is formed from the verb meaning to tell, to give an account. The Hebrew sefer means a scroll, a book, or more abstractly, it can mean a record. Sarna comments in the Jewish Publication Society commentary on Genesis, specifically this word denotes a written document, not an oral composition. So one thing that the Torah is telling us when it uses this kind of language, when it uses specifically the Hebrew word sefer, it's telling us this section of the Bible was passed down in a written form from generation to generation. It was not simply memorized. So by the time Moses, comes along, yes, he writes it down also, but it was already part of a written tradition that we had. That's what the text is signaling. So when you just blow through this quickly, reading your 6 chapters for the annual parasha, the annual Torah portion, it's hard to notice these little nuances that are happening. But since we've slowed down and you stop and think about it, we can realize, okay, this is a hint. The Torah is saying, look, there's some very specific information here, specifically genealogical, that is tying all of mankind back to our ancient ancestors, Adam Rishon and Chawa. And here is the important part of that record. This part was so important that we wrote it down. Our ancestors wrote it down even before we had a written Bible. This was later absorbed by Moses into the Torah. It had been safeguarded and protected by the elders of Israel. This is the record, the recorded record of toledot Adam. Toledot. Let's look at this word. Now, toledot we oftentimes just translate it as genealogies. The root of the word is from Hebrew yalad, letter Y, L, D, yalad, which is to birth or to sire. And from it we get Hebrew yeled, which is a baby or a child, and Hebrew yalda, which is a female baby or female child. But this word means various different things depending on the context. So here I have this green window for you. Look on the lower right. And this is showing the prominent Greek words that was used by the rabbis who made the translation known as the Septuagint. That is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible made approximately 2,300 years ago, plus or minus, probably plus a bit. So look at this. The most common translation of toledot, and you might notice there's a slight spelling difference with the vowels here. That's just because of the grammatical form of the word. This one is in what's called construct state, and this is not. Is Genesis. Look at that. That's where we get the English name of the book of Genesis, from the Greek word Genesis. It means roughly something like origin, source, productive cause. And these are all the places where it occurs in the Septuagint. These are all of the chapters and verses, if you're curious. The next common translation of Hebrew toledot into Greek is the Greek word sungenaya. Sungenaya. And that's 14 times. We have 14 occurrences of this. This word means relationship, kin, as in relative, descent, or family. And here are the verses where that shows up. And then just one time we have a mapping of genea, which means generation or offspring. And that's later in Genesis chapter 25, verse 13. So you see the varied meaning of this Hebrew word toledot. It can mean many things, depending on the context. Even to the ancient translators, they knew to translate it a certain way, depending on the context. And the one they chose for this verse here was Genesis. This one right here, I'll mark it. Oh, I forgot my gloves. I actually bought gloves for writing on the tablet when I teach, so my palm would not register a screen change. And I forgot them. They're in my backpack upstairs. Ah, silly me. So origin, source, Reductive cause. Let's go with origin. Origin and source, they both really are the same thing. So this is the record of the origin of Adam. Rabbi Abarbanael comments, you will note that from here on, the text mentions not, quote, the man, unquote, Hebrew ha-Adam, but Adam, the proper name. So now the man has become just the name Adam. Continuing on with the Hebrew, Genesis chapter 5, verse 1, right after this little sign here, which is an semicolon marker in Hebrew, this guy. Beyom bero Elohim Adam bidmut Elohim asa oto. In the day when God created, this is an infinitive here for you Hebrew students. So here we have a construct chain. In the day when God created Adam, in the likeness of Elohim, of God, or of divine beings, he made him. That last part there means him. For the Filipinos, it's like Tagalog, nya. When you see that at the end, that can mean nya, him. Or, yeah, just him. So let's back up a bit. Let's look at this word here. Hebrew, beyom. Beyom. Rashi comments on this. Rabbi Rashi says, literally, on the day that God created man, since the record of Adam's line begins on the very day that God created man, this tells us that Adam begat children on the very day he was created. That's an interesting interpretation. The same day he was created. So this is a rabbinical perspective. A rabbinical perspective is that Adam, all that stuff of naming the animals and all of these things happened very quickly. And then he had his wife, and then he knew her immediately. Could be. What about this word here? Hebrew, dmut. What's up with that? So this comes from a verb, dama, which ends in letter hey, which if you remember, for those of you just learning how to read, last week's drash was sponsored by the letter hey. If any of you watched the end of my edits that we posted last week, the previous week was sponsored by the letter sheen. This week, I think I would like you, again, please do this. If you have not learned how to read Hebrew yet, this is a must for you. Whenever I say one of these Hebrew letters, it's only one per drash, you need to learn that Hebrew letter. That is your homework for the week. To learn one letter. You can do it. You can do it. When I worked when I was on the Joint Strike Fighter project, there was a Jewish guy working with me, another Jewish guy, but he was secular, also a Jewish girl, also secular, and he did not know how to read. And I convinced him to let me teach him. And he learned on a lunch break in about 45 minutes how to read. So he had a great memory. And so we used to leave notes for each other on the whiteboard on my cubicle. We would write English phrases, but with Hebrew letters, right? Like, Brian is dumb, stuff like this. Lashon hara. But it was a good way for him to keep his memory going so he would not forget how to read. And I suggest you do this too. You can start writing notes in your language or in English using the Hebrew letters. It's a good way to remember, but please do it. So let's today make our Hebrew letter of the week. Let's make it daleth. This guy here, daleth. Daleth. There we go. That's daleth. And it makes a D sound. Letter D. D. I'll write it here. Daleth. Traditionally spelled with an H. Daleth makes a D sound. Okay? So learn it. You'll see it with a dot in the middle and without a dot, right? So here we have daleth in dmut. The word I'm discussing right now begins with the Hebrew letter daleth. Daleth as in dog, or in this Hebrew word, dmut. So dmut comes from the verb dama, which means to be like, to be similar to. So I have a microphone issue that just happened. I need to check. Okay, good, we're back. I will buy a new cable this week for the microphone. The microphone is great. The cable is not so great. So sometimes it flakes out and the recording switches to the laptop microphone, which is standard laptop microphone, not the nice blue Yeti podcaster microphone that one of our members donated. So I would like to use the nice one. So if you see me pause like that, I'm just making sure that you keep hearing the good audio. All right, we're good. It's connected. Dmut means as a type of. That is to say, it is a mark of the hypothetical in the substitution. This is from a research article. There it is. If you're interested, I always try to source my quotations. So if you're interested in further study, you can always see the source. Always try to include the source. For those of you who like Rabbi Mizrachi, this is one thing about him that drives me crazy. He rarely sources his interesting material. And so we don't know where to go if we want to study it or learn more. At least he used to not. I haven't listened to him in over a year because he started getting a little too feisty about Yeshua. I don't like it when someone badmouths Yeshua. You should understand that a large swath of Jews, we don't do this in our tradition. The German Jews, so-called German, it doesn't mean that we're all from Germany. It means vaguely European Jews, right? From Russia, from Poland, from Germany, from France, etc. Most of the European Jews and most of the American Jews are quote unquote German Jews, right? Or we call ourselves Ahkenazi Jews, right? From the region of Ashkenaz, which was Germany and part of France, etc. In the Ahkenazi tradition, one should not badmouth Yeshua of Nazareth. If you know an Ashkenazi Jew and they are bad-mouthing Yeshua, you can gently remind them, hey, you are not following the Yavitz. The Yavitz is the name of a great Ashkenazi rabbi, very highly respected, considered one of the great ones. His name was Rabbi Jacob Emden, E-M-D-E-N, if you want to research any of his writings. Very respected. And he wrote a book about Yeshua. He read the New Testament and he wrote a book about him. And he clarified that Yeshua was a Hebrew word, tzaddik. He was a righteous person. He was righteous. In Rabbi Emden's understanding, Yeshua had a goal, and that goal was to reduce the horrible idolatry that is in the world. And Rabbi Jacob Emden understood that Yeshua accomplished his goal, because from his ministry as a rabbi came forth Gentile Christianity, which in the rabbi's understanding wiped out paganism from Europe, from parts of the Middle East, and of course it's gone even further today into the ends of the earth. It is the largest religion on the earth today, if we loosely couple all of the denominations into Christendom. He also included Islam as a monotheist religion from his understanding. We're not going to debate the merits of that, just to show that this is the official Ashkenazi Jewish position. So when you hear someone like Rabbi Mizrachi, who is not a European Jew, he's a Persian Jew and some other mix, right? Some other mix. That's what Mizrachi usually means, actually. We've got the largest groups are the European Jews, i.e. the Ashkenazi, and then the Sephardim, the Spanish Jews, so-called Spanish Jews from Arabia, who were kicked out by the Roman Catholics from Spain in 1492, when King Ferdinand and Isabella took control of the country. They promptly kicked out all Jews who would not convert to Catholicism. Those Jews went down into Upper Africa and into Arabia. And so today they usually speak Arabic and this old form of Spanish called Ladino. Classical Spanish they speak, those who have maintained that tradition. So if you hear someone bad-mouthing Yeshua, they're either not an Ashkenazi Jew or they're a very ignorant Ashkenazi Jew. They don't understand that they are sinning according to our tradition. This is why it's hard for me to listen to Mizrachi anymore. I stopped over a year ago. Maybe he got better. I don't know. I heard that the Russian Jew there correct him before when Mizrachi called Yeshua a Hebrew word rasha, a wicked person. The Russian guy corrected him, said you shouldn't do that, and he quoted the Yavitz, he quoted Jacob Emden, and Mizrachi did not fight back, which means he realized it's wrong to do this. So please, if you ever hear a Jewish person bad-mouthing Yeshua, you should understand it's out of either ignorance of what our ancestors taught, or it's out of reactionism to how they've been mistreated by certain people from Christianity. Yeah, that's the position, at least for European Jewry, that Yeshua was. Hold on. Okay, the microphone cut out again. I'm sorry. So, dmut, it's as a type of. It doesn't mean that God necessarily looks like us. He might. He might. I'm talking about the Father who created the universe as recorded in the beginning of Genesis. He may have some kind of image that looks a little like us. Nobody knows because no one can look on him and live. We can only look on the emanation of his spirit that is in the Son. We can look on Yeshua. We cannot look on the Father. God made him, meaning Adam. This suffix points back to Adam.